Welcome, folks, to this week's DevRel AMA. I already forgot the name. That's how long it's been. But Max is back. So DevRel AMAs are back, and we have quite a bit to talk about. So let's get straight to it. How's it going, Max?
It's going good. It's going good. I'm back. I'm rested. I am unfortunately on my own again in DevRel, but apart from that, everything is cool.
A bit more about that in a bit. But the first community question, that is also my question. How was your vacation?
It was wonderful and very much needed. Yeah, it was very nice. I kind of look at my laptop and my phone for like almost 3 weeks, which was quite necessary. I think just did a lot of reading basically and saw some cool shit.
I envy that a little bit, to be honest with you. Not looking at my phone for a bit would probably do me some favors. But anyways, folks, leave your questions in either the community poll text channel as usual, or you can also leave them now in the stage chat that was recently added to Discord. And probably we're actually going to be deleting the community poll text channel because it's just a source of confusion at this point. And until then, I actually have a question for you, Max. Let's talk a little bit about you staying alone again and doing the work of 7 people approximately again. So maybe since this is pretty much the audience which I'm guessing you would be hiring for in your team, let's talk a little bit about the DevRel position at Nym.
So yeah, basically we do have maybe Simon, you can find the or for Noosh as well. It'd be helpful if you could grab the link actually that we have up for that because we have the job posting online. I don't want to get accidentally chucked out of it again when I'm trying to find something, so I won't. So yeah, we've got it online. We're looking for 2 people to join DevRel with the mixture of skills kind of being somewhat you expect, which is obviously being able to sit in community channels and help people both in terms of debugging node operations and stuff like this, as well as people who are actually building apps with Nym. That said, you don't have to speak Rust or anything. Obviously, whatever programming languages you do speak is very helpful. We are having React or some front end skills would also be really nice, and that's partially because once the team grows, and I'll be able to share some more of this quite soon actually with everyone. But like I did with the Cosmos demo in Barcelona, like a month and a bit ago now, being able to build stuff in DevRel and quite quickly kind of build little, first hacky apps and things like this. That is also something that I want to do a bit more. And front end is really not my forte. So yeah, having front end skills is also be really nice. But basically that, going to conferences, doing talks, etc. Yeah.
You left out one thing, Max.
What's that?
You were very close with this last one, but you left out attending a DevRel AMAs and answering questions to our wonderful community, right?
Oh, I mean that just counts as community stuff in my mind. It's that and writing blogs, writing the docs. Like there's multiple different forms that this stuff that DevRel does kind of touches, but docs, talks, and community channels, including stuff like the DevRel AMA, are like the core elements, basically, what we'd like to see.
That was a good save. Well done.
Yeah, right. Category error is always a good save.
Exactly. Farnoosh or one of our amazing community managers, if you could please grab the link to the open DevRel position, that would be huge. Just post it in chat so that people can take a look at the position. And moving on to the next very important burning question from No Dump Node. I also have it on my list. What happened to your Discord account, Max?
Oh yeah. So yeah, basically, I kept my Discord second factor authentication app was on a phone that I then broke when I was in Mexico. But it was kind of the last few days before I came back, so I didn't really get a chance to fix it. So I was locked out of Discord for a bit. I don't know, I might just keep this account now and just appreciate the other one because my old Discord account was like, I had so many servers and things in it, and this is quite nice and clean. But yeah, basically just 2FA and not being able to find the restore codes. Yeah.
That happened to me too. Actually, like when I was setting up this server and opening it up for launch back last April, my account was disabled like one day before the launch. It was not fun at all. So actually, on to the first more technical question, which is my question, but I think it's a pretty good one for this call because it's very timely. What's up with the new binaries or actually the new I guess it's called the binaries and the wallet release? So the changes in signature. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, for those of you that have run gateways, you've definitely noticed this. For those of you who are continuing to operate mixed nodes, then you won't really have noticed it. And it's only really affecting newcomers. But basically, and this is in the docs as well, but when you're now bonding a node, previously, when you were bonding a node, when you initialized either your mixed node or your gateway, it had a user signature that was generated. And what this was a signature. I believe it was the wallet address that you were bonding with, so like your Nym address, right? That was signed using the private identity key of that node. So it's kind of deterministically able to be generated. It will always be that. And that was just generated on initialization and given to you. And if I remember correctly, you had to provide that when you were first bonding your node, right? And all that basically did, that having you produce a signature signed with the key of the node that you were bonding kind of allowed for us to just say, to make sure basically that you were bonding a node that you had actually had access to, right? You weren't just bonding a random other identity key. Okay. There was a small drawback with that because it was static. And also the mixnet contract itself didn't really there was no overview really of the wallet address, right? And how many transactions each wallet address had done. Because obviously when you bond a node, when you unbond a node, if you change some of the parameters, you're actually making a call to the smart contract, the mixnet smart contract on the next chain from the wallet. Right? That's actually what's happening under the hood, even if you didn't necessarily realize it. What we've done now is we've basically done all of these changes to mean that basically it's an extra element of replay protection, which is difficult to say quickly, for users. And basically what that means is that now you will create a signature, and the process is slightly different. What you do is you essentially create a signature, one of the inputs of which is given to you by the wallet. What that does is it means that the mixnet smart contract has an idea now, it has a mapping basically of each Nym address that has a node bonded and a nonce next to it, with the first nonce is just an incrementing number, right? So you can imagine it like a counter. And every time you perform a transaction, then that counter increases. And basically what this means is that then by replay protection, those of you that come from the Ethereum space probably know what replay protection is. Kind of one type of replay attack was actually the thing used with the first DAO hack, which was fun, but this is different, or it's slightly different. Basically what it means is that no one else can submit a transaction for you. So no one else, if they manage to know some of your node information, they couldn't, for instance, change mixed node parameters for you. Because now, because of this initial signature, and then you have an incrementing nonce, basically the mixnet contract knows who exactly transactions are meant to be coming from, how many transactions have already been signed. And then if you try and use one that's already been used, right? Say if you change your profit margin to be a little bit lower, or then but I decide to fuck with you, and I'm like, okay, and somehow I have the ability to send stuff to know what the signature was, right, that you used in that transaction, and I decide to resubmit it to the contract, the contract will be like, no, you can't do that. So it's that's the reason for it. It's basically just more secure for everyone going forward. That was a very long-winded way of getting there. Apologies for that.
No, actually, thank you, because I was just about to ask just for myself what replay attacks are, because I was not entirely sure, but now it's crystal clear. So thanks for the very detailed explanation.
No worries.
Next question from our beloved Sven from Notice Verify / Pineapple Proxy. Can you please summarize what happened development-wise over the past few weeks, if you know, of course, since you got back? But a quick note regarding this first, guys. We're about to start releasing weekly updates from not only the dev side, but also from other teams of the project. So basically, the idea is that we came up with Mikola is that we're going to be taking notes at team meetings that we have, like Nym team meetings every Monday, and then add some stuff from the community in there. So from Pineapple Proxy and Notice Verify, what has happened over the week, and then we're going to share weekly updates, because sometimes it feels like we're doing our thing, we're busy building stuff and testing things and all of that, and we don't always know what would be valuable info for our community, and it may look like we're kind of quiet for a while, but it's not actually the case. It's just, we have our heads down and work on stuff. So to address that, we actually thought that we would write these like weekly quick and dirty notes of what's been going on with the project and just dump it on you guys once a week on Telegram and Discord. So maybe we'll have like a specific channel for this in the future. I'm not sure about the format yet, but stay tuned for that. Anyways, until that, Max, can you please give like a quick overview of the dev side for the past few weeks?
Yeah, sure. We basically have some fun stuff in the works, and there's one particularly fun piece of stuff that I've actually been documenting today, which we have kind of let's say an early access version of. So we had the aforementioned signing changes. Now, obviously, even though it sounds like, oh, well, you're just changing one bit, it's anything to do with the wallet and the smart contract kind of touches multiple points. That has taken up a reasonable amount of dev time. We have work continuing on a couple of things, all of which are pretty fun and big in their own right. So we have, also, sorry, the week before, so last Tuesday, I believe we also didn't have a release for, I think, a deployment reason. So, yeah, what we have kind of on the rumbling on is we have some work that's happening on implementing stack tracing. So like a stack tracing mode in clients. And this will basically help if, when we're trying to diagnose some of the errors that have been popping up over the last couple of months with regards to clients and gateways getting overloaded. And Sven, particularly, actually, this might also be really useful for the problem that I know you're having, where you have an Nym client that's running for like a couple of days, and then it seems to go into some kind of strange frozen state. So again, obviously that's touching a lot of stuff in the code base, so that's coming on, but that's in the works. We are working on some improvements for Test My Node, which is going to be really cool. Yes, we had the Coconut sandbox that came out when I was on vacation. The Coconut work is continuing as ever. Obviously, the Coconut stuff that's out on Sandbox at the moment, it's a bit difficult to use, but hopefully people are using it to, kind of get an idea of what's going on. And then big thing I kind of want to focus on is the SDKs, particularly the Rust SDK. And that's the thing that, a lot of work has been happening with that I've been documenting today in this kind of early access. This is now kind of getting slightly ahead of the update, but if you don't mind, Simon, I'll just plug on with this because a lot of work has been happening over these couple of weeks. Oh, also we have mixnet parameterization as well, which is also being worked on, which we've been talking about for a while. Basic idea of that is that you can essentially kind of have you can set some different parameters about how your traffic moves through the mixnet. So stuff like the base amount of a variable delay on each hop. If you want to send something really, 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 really privately, and you don't mind it taking an hour, or well, probably not an hour because the keys will roll over, but whatever, 45 minutes to go through the mixnet instead of the add whatever tiny amount of latency that we currently have, and also having different latency settings from all the different users of the mixnet also actually increases overall privacy as well, which is great. So that's also been happening. The Rust SDK. So we have the TypeScript SDK at the moment. For those that don't know, an SDK is a software development kit. Basically, the Rust SDK is fucking awesome because much like the TypeScript SDK, which allows you to just start a client as currently a web worker process, we are also working on having the TypeScript SDK work and stuff like a headless JavaScript, like a Node.js environment as well. So that is also being worked on. The Rust SDK basically allows you to import a crate, and a crate is what they call Rust dependencies, right? It's what dependency libraries are called in Rust. So you can just import a crate, and with that crate, you can either create a Nym client or load in an existing key pair, and then you can interact with it, which sounds very simple. But at the moment, one of the frustrating aspects of developing applications with Nym is that you have to run the clients as separate processes on the machine. Okay, which apart from the fact that you need to then download the binary or build the repo, have the binary sat there, initialize them manually, all of this kind of stuff, it also makes it brings up some issues when you're developing. So I've been coming across this when I've been working on something, which maybe I'll also talk about in a little bit as well. You shut down the process you're working on, and then that means you like break the WebSocket connection to your node, to your Nym client, and then the Nym client kind of freaks out. And, it's adding all of these extra points of friction to developing apps with Nym that just, are removed basically by this SDK. It just means you can import and interact with a Nym client and therefore the Mixnet and soon Coconut as well, the same way that you would import any other library in a Rust project as a dependency. Okay. And this is both the WebSocket client and the SOX 5 client. So especially for integrations with apps that are already written in Rust, that means you can now see how integrations become so much easier, because it's like, oh, okay, you integrate the connection and handling of traffic with Nym, you just integrate it as another process into your app, like any other process. Instead of having to manually send the traffic, from an app to a client that's listening and checking that it's alive, and all of this kind of stuff that was just a bit clunky before. That basically, I'm writing the docs for that now. So before I said it was kind of early access. What I mean by this is that for those of you who are JavaScript programmers, for instance, you have NPM, which is the Node Package Manager, and NPM is basically libraries of other Node libraries you can download and use as dependencies in your own project. And it has, I'm completely blank on the word. It's a directory that is online, also has a nice web interface, all of this kind of stuff. The Rust version of that is called crates.io, which means that then if you want to install it, you can, it's there on crates.io. You can see it in this manifest with all the other Rust crates that you can just download and all of this. Now, that is the usual way that you would import a crate, and that would be what being fully released kind of looks like, I would say. Right now, we're not on crates.io because there are a lot of other crates that we will have to kind of put up there and work out as dependencies basically before that. So for right now, what you can do, which is in the docs that I'm writing, is that you can actually pull the crate from the mono repo on GitHub. It's not really any more difficult. You just use a Git repo link instead of the normal way you import a crate. But yeah, that's what I mean by early access kind of thing. It will make everything a lot smoother if you're writing Rust. And one of the ways, possibly as a new tutorial, something that I was working on before I went away from actually the Barcelona demo that I built, is like a little developer tool, which is basically just a binary that sits on your computer and has a couple of modes. So it's just a client connection that, say if you want to test, I'm building this service provider, I just want something to send a message to it every 5 seconds that I don't have to manually trigger. This is just a process I can leave running on my computer, and then I can keep trying to fix the service provider until everything happens as it should. Or I just want to test that I just want to test that I can send something and it's being properly received. This can also just act as like a little endpoint. So it's just a very simple developer tool. With the Rust client, that makes it a million times easier because it's just a single binary that has a Nym client, and it could also have Nym's SOX 5 client just embedded in it. Probably for the tutorial for using the SDK or another tutorial, I might kind of go through building that binary as a project, or at least a simple version of it, so people can start playing around with it. The final thing, I suppose, is that we should also rename the SOX 5 client because it's actually a SOX 4A and 5 client now, but that's a bit clunky as a name.
That's a beautiful name. Let's immediately rename it.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, just a personal note, I really love to host these DevRel AMAs with you because I learned so much as a non-dev about like all sorts of stuff. So thanks for the huge tangent. It really it makes me understand things, even though I don't really have like a lot of development experience or anything like that. Huge.
Thanks.
Now we have quite a few amazing community questions, but before that, I'm gonna ask my own because I'm interested to hear like are there any other major pain points or blockers or like breakthroughs that we need to achieve before development becomes easy, like developing apps using Nym becomes easy?
Okay. I think there's a couple of possible things here. Some of them are like developer tool things, and some of them are more like network side things. On just like on the developer side, for instance, right? There are some functions that still need to go into the TypeScript SDK, for instance, which will then make that really easy to use. Obviously, as soon as we have Coconut up and running, we can then also start integrating that functionality into these TypeScript and Rust SDKs. So I think those are two kind of dev related things. I think another developer related thing is also like, tooling, any tooling that would make developers' lives easier, right? And I think tooling, or at least Nym specific tooling, will just that kind of comes from basically when people are developing and they work out things that would be nice to have, like this little kind of listener interval based sender binary, right? That I was thinking about. Like I just thought of building that because I would find it useful the next time I'm trying to build a service provider. That's how project specific tooling kind of arises. So it'd be interesting to see if people have more ideas or needs from their own experience going forward. So I would say those are kind of the developer side things, which aren't too crazy, actually, which is really cool. I think there's still work to be done with regards to, oh shit, actually, this reminds me, one of the other things I forgot about in the what has happened section of the talk, the smart contract, basically creating like a topology of service providers, which I think I talked about before I went away. That is also coming on as well. So what that means is that, at the moment we have a list of service providers that we know about because of the service grants, but much in the same way as with the mixed nodes and the gateways, once we have this smart contract deployed, then it also means people can just announce service providers themselves and they don't have to go through this bottleneck. And it means we can also start kind of building up a directory of services, which mostly at the moment will be network requesters. But, in the future, when we get more, then you can start to see how, this is kind of the base of having a kind of, a good decentralized directory of things to do with Nym, which is cool. And so, there's a couple of processes like this that are happening, I think, on the developer side that will all make it, nicer to start getting loads of people deving. So there's a couple of things that I already mentioned as well previously. Right now, because gateways are not necessarily incentivized, because we don't have bandwidth credentials enabled, then there's not the same crypto economic incentive to be running like a robust gateway as there is with a mixed node, because of the crypto economic market dynamics that we're kind of applying to mixed nodes to get this kind of quality of service reputation. I think bandwidth credentials will then kind of start incentivizing gateways a bit more, or start incentivizing gateways full stop outside of altruistic gateways, which is obviously awesome to see. Yeah, hopefully those credentials would then also mean that people can start getting paid for services as well, which obviously that means more people have services that they can then announce in a decentralized and public way and they get paid for it, right? So it's kind of this snowballing effect, I think, because also as soon as people can start getting paid for running services, I imagine more people will start building services. It's kind of a multifaceted answer to that is what I was kind of getting at.
With that, actually, I'm going to jump forward a few questions, folk. I'm gonna get back to your earlier questions, but I think this ties into it really nicely into what you just said. So, if it was up to you, you and you only, like 100%, how would you spend the Nym Innovation Fund, which is $300 million for those who don't know? So, what apps and initiatives would you funnel it towards?
So I suppose they would have to be like smaller projects. Is that kind of what you're asking?
I think you have free reign, Max. You have 300 mil, and you got to put it towards the Nym ecosystem.
All right, cool. That's interesting. So one of the things that is one of the very cool things about the chain safe integration that's happening, right, is that they're basically building the Rust libp2p Nym module. Yeah. Which means that any project that can then use libp2p, which is there's multiple projects both in like the peer-to-peer space and also the kind of crypto space that use it. Funding people to start integrating them into something like Nostr or ActivityPub as well, which is the protocol that like Mastodon implements partially, that Secure Scuttlebutt also implements as well. So I would definitely spend some of it getting like peer-to-peer protocols and apps into Nym and start building up the set of apps that people that kind of are themselves also peer-to-peer and kind of robust and somewhat decentralized, at least distributed. Bringing those into Nym as well. That would be my main focus, I think. The other one would be some kind of like a Nym DNS would be really cool to fund. This is not just me like blue skying stuff.
Well, that would be huge and very much needed.
Yeah, so big focus on basically like a big focus on peer-to-peer stuff, I would say. Some kind of like these kind of P2P web of trust kind of systems I would also really, really like to see work on like wallets with social recovery as a tool. I think would be amazing as well. This is kind of like a bigger need that I see for this in the crypto space.
Social recovery, as in some people who know you and you trust can recover your keys and funds even in case you lose your.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like basically it's like secret sharding. Instead of the current setup, which is where you generate a key pair, you have the private key, and if you lose the private key, you are fucked. Or if anyone else knows your private key, you're similarly fucked. It's this very binary, very individuated kind of. You mess anything up, and you go to full nuclear, like everything's gone. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a dev and I hate having keys around. Like it's
Yeah.
I'm a pretty technical person, and even I get stressed about keys, and I just don't like having them around. So having something where actually instead you shard a secret, and then you select a group of people, and there's millions of different permutations of this, but ultimately it kind of boils down to, say you select 10 friends, and you need 6 of them to all put their little bits of your secret together, and then you can restore your key, right? Which essentially is your gateway into these systems. And especially, if we're talking about like something like the base element of like a reputation system or something, which maybe then is also used by Noster, then you can start to see how actually this is like it then makes everything way more robust, but also way less scary. And also just like more forgiving and social and real. That actually it's like, yeah, I don't have to rely on the fact that I have DevOps level kind of like digital hygiene with backups and this and that and whatever, or that just I don't know, my apartment doesn't burn down. Actually, you can then approach these people that you trust, and they can allow you to kind of get back into these systems. And I think that as well as being more like social and real, I think that also just makes everything a lot less like scary as well. That's kind of another way that I think you can start getting more people involved too, where it's like it's not like, oh, you've got to download this and save a mnemonic and don't lose it because da da da. It's like just pick 6 friends and then 6 people that you really trust and that you trust won't try and fuck you over. But then there's also other ways of doing this, like you have you make a 2 of 2 multi-sig with yourself or something, and like that key is a key that you actually keep in a locked in a box that you bury in a forest or something, whatever. Like there are loads of permutations on top of this, but I just think as a base level it makes everything a lot more like appealing and less alienated.
I think we underestimate how much of we're used to this stuff, right? In this space, we know private keys, you lose it, it's a big problem, all of that stuff. But still, it's annoying for all of us. But then for a normie, right, or someone just like looking into getting involved in any sort of crypto related stuff, I think we underestimate how much of a blocker this is for the average person.
Yeah,
Like in a world where you have all your passwords saved in Google Chrome, and then if you log into the next browser with Google Chrome, obviously, or with your Google account, obviously that's not good practice, but still everybody's doing that. And then in that world, having these long ass keys that you need to save, or if you lose, then you're fucked. That's not great. So anything that alleviates that is a huge step towards mass adoption, in my opinion.
yeah. I love multi-sigs because the beauty of a multi-sig is, yeah, you can actually, yeah, I don't need to rehash it. It's fine, whatever. I can rant about this all day. Basically, it's just, yeah, making this a bit more real and sociable. Actually, kind of in a similar way that privacy in this space, I think, also has to kind of be seen as well, right? Just, yeah, in your day-to-day life, you don't share everything with everyone, right? This is like, it seems like a really common sense point. This is actually, it's put really, really nicely in her piece, an essay that she wrote by Sarah Friend, who is a really good artist and writer. She wrote a really nice piece on this, which off the top of my head, I think it's called Becoming the Hydra or Being the Hydra, about identity and software design. I will find the link and drop it in the chat. But, and she kind of highlights it as well with this, where it's like having this everything transparent and permanent identity in blockchain systems is actually like really fucking bizarre. Similarly, we also shouldn't forget how new, not even just the level of, but like the concept of digital surveillance is as well. And I think much like how privacy is trying to get shit to be a bit more like don't say real life, but you know what I mean, kind of IRL space, I think also social recovery is like a step in that direction as well. It's like everything just becomes a lot less alienating, both for you as someone who's using it, so you don't have to be like, oh my God, I doxed my Ethereum account. Now everyone will know all the transactions I made in perpetuity. And I think that's the same with keys. But yeah, I'll find that essay and I'll drop it in the chat because I recommend everyone read it. I'll also throw it in the Element chat as well, in the readings channel.
Oh yeah.
Because more people should come to Element as well.
Yeah. Let's plug our Element channel, especially for this close-knit audience that we have here, our core audience.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 5 more questions. It's going to be something that is considered in these DevRel AMAs a rapid fire or something like that.
Cool.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go. Sven, our beautiful Sven, is asking the next question as well. So, what are the next things we're going to see on ZK Nym development since a milestone and demo working on the testnet?
The next thing you're going to see should be like a proof of concept of a use case. I'm not going to tell you what it is now though, because I don't know if we can talk about it. But there's some work happening there.
I think we can, maybe, or actually, that's not, maybe a bit later.
Let's not take that risk, maybe.
Okay. All right, guys. If we can talk about it, then you will know it before the next DevRel AMA because it's going to be in that weekly update that I mentioned. I already put together the text of it. I just need to have it approved. Then when it goes out, this thing that Max is talking about may be in it. So stay tuned for that. I hope that was a good enough cliffhanger. We already answered what has happened to your Discord account, so let's keep that one. Question from Hoistic: how was the Ninja program kickoff? Well, that's a question for me.
Mm-hmm.
So as you guys know, probably Mikola has joined the team as our ambassador manager. He's been doing a really, really good job of giving shape to the Ninja program in a way that I could never have done. So it's shaping up to be really amazing. It hasn't kicked off yet. Only the submissions and applications kicked off. So especially to this audience, I would recommend everybody to apply if you have any interest in being an ambassador of Nym and spreading our message. Because interviews are going to start shortly, and then we're going to be picking some people who are truly great ambassadors of Nym. Like I said during community calls, we really didn't want, and that's part of the reason why we have Mikola, and why I was initially, when we spoke about launching an ambassador program internally, I was kind of on the fence about doing so, because ambassador programs, if we're honest in this space, are pretty cringe and terrible. We're not about to launch just another one of those. We want like a meaningful and proper one, and that is actually happening, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, stay tuned for more, and definitely apply if you have any inclination to do so. So that's all there is to about the ambassador program. Nick is asking. A lot of people are asking when Nym VPN. I can already sense, just by reading the beginning of the question, I can sense the soon TM vibes in this question very, very heavily. Could you share some general thoughts on this topic? Are you planning to introduce Nym Connect updates? Actually, no, that's not soon TM. I think we can answer this.
This is a gap in my knowledge, so go for it with what you've got.
So, well, Nym VPN, which is going to be our first general purpose use case. Well, I mean, firstly, obviously, I hope that goes without saying that besides some major integrations that could be coming, this is the big thing, right? That could be happening to Nym. So this is, I think, the primary thing that is going to happen this year, according to our roadmap. Well, basically, a lot of the stuff, for example, what Max talked about, parameterization, being able to change, the desired latency, being able to pick your spot on the latency privacy trade-off curve. That was a necessity for this. Also, all the optimizations that happened as a result of putting the mixnet under like real world use through Nym Connect. So please keep using Nym Connect because it's very important for us to gather real world information and then being able to like fine tune the mixnet according to that. So that sort of stuff is slowly falling into place. So Nym VPN, let's call it that. I really hate the name, but let's call it that. Shaping up to be a reality, and it's incredibly exciting. I don't know if you have any specific questions about it, Nick, then let us know because that's all I have for you for now. Anything to riff on, Max?
No, not really. I mean, I suppose it's like kind of an interesting spot. Maybe it's kind of a tangentially interesting thing, I suppose. I don't know if everyone saw the Molvin browser that was released earlier this week. Yeah, they're a VPN provider and they built a browser with the Tor team. It doesn't necessarily use Tor, but is I think basically what they did was like kind of take like obviously Tor built the Tor browser, so they know a lot about kind of privacy hardening in a browser code projects. it's part of that like bigger interesting cycle that we've seen in the last couple of years of everyone marketing privacy, but it not actually being proper privacy, like actually kind of continuing to build into actual privacy shit. Like I swear 2 years ago.
NordVPN.
Yeah, exactly. 2 years ago, every single podcast that did adverts was supposedly sponsored by NordVPN. Now, we know that VPNs are just a scam, especially something massive like Nord. They still have all your shit, and if they get subpoenaed, then they'll give all of that information to whoever asked them. But it's kind of part of this broader point that, like, especially after the pandemic and after Snowden and stuff, like the appetite for privacy is actually there. It's just there'll be a lot of, we also live in capitalism. So NordVPN have a load of marketing budget they can throw out and tell everyone it's private. WhatsApp can pretend to be all data protectory because it's E2E encrypted, which, we know is bullshit, but it shows that they're actually responding to like a real market one, and building actual software takes a lot longer than whacking like a marketing spin on something that's essentially like a honeypot. So obviously now it's like, yeah, people are actually, the product of people building is also now kind of increasing as well. And I think the Nym VPN is just a continuation of that. It ties into that. People want this like general purpose privacy. A lot more people are using privacy enhanced browsers as well. Obviously there's Brave, which is Chromium based. There's LibreWolf as well, which I use, which is like a really hardened Firefox. And yeah, Nym VPN will just be another layer of protection you can throw in all of this stuff, and it'll be sick.
Pretty unique layer of protection at that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The second part of this question is actually something pretty interesting, and I think it ties into something that you said earlier. The second part of the question from Nick is, are you planning to introduce new Nym Connect updates? One thing I guess that maybe we should mention here is is what you just talked about, how broadcasting is the right word? Broadcasting service providers. Am I saying the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, call it a directory, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So that ties really nicely into one of the recent big updates to Nym Connect, where you can now select your own service provider manually. So I guess once that update that you talked about, Max, will go live, I guess you can just use Nym Connect for whatever, basically, right? So it's becoming more of a like a Swiss Army knife sort of thing, rather than just privacy enhanced Telegram and Keybase and the Electrum wallet. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right now, network requesters pull down this like default list that we have. And this is also another area that, for instance, could be kind of expanded on as well. I'll kind of deal with the two things separately, but obviously they kind of mutually support each other. So like right now, network requesters will just pull down the default like whitelist, which basically has support for the health check, which lives on the Nymtech domain, which is basically just how we test if it's up. And then all the apps that Nym Connect supports, as well as I think stuff for the Helios client as well. But obviously everyone is free to edit this list as they want, right, on something they're running. And so exactly because of that, then now that people can just announce their network requesters themselves, what you can then have is I could set up a network requester that would only allow, I don't know, let's say element traffic. Then I can announce that to everyone. And then presuming the description is set nicely, exactly, someone who's using Nym Connect and wants to, maybe Element was a bad example because you can't actually proxy the desktop app. But imagine that you could for a moment. Then you could actually just check the Nym Connect directory and be like, oh, well, someone supports that. That's brilliant. And then load up Nym Connect and you're using Element with Nym Connect through the mixnet, which is pretty sick. The second thing, which isn't in active development yet, but that could also be interesting here, is like right now, this default allowed list is just, it lives in like the Nym mono repo. No, it's not in the mono repo, but it lives in one of our code bases. And when we change it, it auto deploys, and it just auto deploys to somewhere on the nymtech.net domain. But you could also imagine that maybe you could also decentralize that, both in terms of editing. So imagine maybe like Nixdao could become the arbiter of that, and then people could propose to change it and propose to like add an application support basically to like the canonical base list of stuff that we assume most people will be running. And then you could also think about, where do you host that? Maybe you host that in a smart contract. One of the things which actually just shows, I think mostly shows the difference to me between like Cosmos and Ethereum is because I was a smart contract programmer before, right? Where sometimes I've deployed smart contracts that cost like $2,000 in gas. Like, I'm not joking, which is grotesque. And you kind of always think of ways to like, okay, how can I like minimalize the logic I have in a smart contract as much as possible? Maybe I'll store it on IPFS or something like this. But actually, with the Cosmos SDK chain, it's insanely cheap to interact with. So you could also just be like, okay, cool, we'll put the default domain, we'll put like the default whitelist in a smart contract that the DAO has access to edit or something like this. And so you can start to see how like we could further, kind of decentralize this as well. That was a bit of another blue sky rant. Sorry.
I don't know if you guys noticed, if you ever transferred any Nym tokens, like transaction costs right now are fractions of a fraction of a Nym. So yeah, it's pretty cheap to do stuff like that and on Cosmos, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Anyways, I think we did cover. I guess let me know, Sven, if you still have a question about SDK. But he asked a question about SDKs, like other SDKs, at the beginning of the call, and I think after that we kind of thoroughly covered all the SDK stuff there is to cover.
Yeah.
So the next question was the one that I jumped to earlier about the Nym Innovation Fund. If Max found himself having like 300 mil to spend on the Nym ecosystem. So then moving on to the next one. Yeah, it's also from Nick. To build on top of Sudo's question, what are the main blockers when negotiating Nym integration with businesses, B2B, non-crypto IT companies? What are their concerns?
I'm not necessarily the person to ask that. I'm not really involved in that, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately. I like my job, but unfortunate in that I can't really answer your question. I don't know. I mean, I can take some wild guesses, but let's flag everything I'm going to say now as like a kind of guess. I mean, look, there's a couple of things. It's like obviously anything in the privacy space is you're going to want to see some kind of a proof that actually the thing is as private as you're being told it is, right? Or that you're reading that something is. And there isn't just like a single thing that can do that. It's like a multi-layered thing, right? It's kind of, there's all of the cryptography underlying all of this. That's been like peer reviewed and, proofs have been made and all of this kind of stuff, right? So you can, that's some stuff that you need to kind of assess. And then there's also the auditing of the code as well, making sure that the code is all there and everything like this. And, we're going through audit processes as well. It's all going well as well, which is great. But that's another thing. So I imagine it's kind of if you are privacy conscious and you're looking to integrate with something, then there's quite a few things maybe that you'd want to check first. Another thing is, I suppose, like a certain amount of a snowballing effect.
Exactly.
If you run a business and you're maybe looking at integrating something new, then obviously you want to look at who else is using it and who else is integrated with it and all of this kind of stuff. And so that's kind of
that's the early adapters dilemma, right?
Yeah.
That's like a thing known in economy as well.
Yeah.
For economics.
Which is why now that all of these SDKs are kind of becoming a little bit more mature, it's actually really important for people to just start building shit as well. Because if the example of a chat app that someone builds and actually is like, oh, you can actually just really nicely like do functioning chat through the mixnet, that could be another thing that someone from Signal sees and then is like, oh, cool, it does actually work, or like it's all like a cumulative effect. And also, we do have these dev grants, we do have this innovation fund.
Exactly.
So maybe actually, if someone just builds something really cool, we don't have to integrate, like that's also another avenue. And yeah, I think that's all I can like broadly speak of. But I mean, all of my deving basically has also been in crypto. So I've never worked for like a traditional Web 2 company. So I also wouldn't necessarily really know what the inside of one of those looks like to be able to start guesstimating for you. Yeah. So I hope that was kind of an answer.
Yeah, that was a pretty good answer, and my also very general and very far from business development and like integrations answer would have been the same. But Nick, rest assured that I'm going to have at least one person, but maybe even two people on community calls, on upcoming community calls, who will be able to answer this question in like a much more precise way, who are much closer to the NDD. So stay tuned for that. So I'm going to say for now, damn, I really love to do these big cliffhangers for people so that they can't sleep for a few days. That's it feels really nice. Anyways, the next question also from Nick, who's on fire today. I think it's a really good one, and probably we can give a better answer to this, Max, because we're closer to it. So, are we ready for real mass adoption? 100K plus daily active users, for example, bandwidth/capacity. Now, I guess before mentioning anything else. As you guys know, the Nym mixnet is almost infinitely scalable. So if we want more mixed nodes, if we want basically like a higher throughput and more capacity, then we can just change mixnet parameters and scale very quickly as a result of that. So in this sense, it's not impossible, but there's also some, I guess, some optimization aspects to this, which I'm not entirely familiar with. Max, what's your take?
I'd say there's two things that precluding that. Because yeah, you were talking about mixed nodes, and you're right in saying that like the actual set of mixed nodes can scale. And the set of mixed nodes, again, because they've been incentivized for quite a while, and people are incentivized, financially incentivized as well as otherwise to run them well, then we have like hopefully a fairly robust set of mixed nodes. Okay. But one of the things that will happen with the parameterization is, and some other work as well that's happening on the packet format to make the packet format more efficient. After we do those things, then we'll also be able to start looking at like, okay, cool, what is the actual, what's like the optimum hardware setup for mixed nodes, right? Because right now, we don't necessarily have like a hard and fast spec of like, you need whatever, this much memory. We know that you don't really need any storage because mixed nodes doesn't store anything, but you know what I mean? Like, at least a set of like base technical requirements for like a good mixed node. And those things kind of come sequentially as well. But once that has happened, then you can imagine a situation where all the mixed nodes we do have are actually like decently beefy to be able to handle everything. Let's not just focus on the mixed nodes, because you also have gateways and you also have services, which is what you're actually gonna do with the mixed net. Right now, neither of those are incentivized. And some comments, like the comment that I mentioned before, when I was talking about integrating tracing, right? To have a look at like why some of these gateways are occasionally shitting the bed. Oops, probably maybe shouldn't have said that. I don't know. Are we allowed to swear on these? Is it like BBC? Is it like the radio?
This is folks. If you have your family with you, if you have your kids listening to this DevRel AMA with them, then
Yeah.
please don't do that next time. This is not a family-friendly
Sorry.
show. We don't like children here.
Um,
It's an adult show. No, feel free, Max. We're free to say anything here.
cool. I don't know. You never know. It's Discord. I don't. You might break terms of service or something and get thrown off. Who knows with centralized platforms? Hey, which is why we need to build decentralized ones. Yeah. So the other aspect, right, is that like you have gateways and services. Services is obviously broad. At the moment, the vast majority of the services, basically almost all of them, are network requesters. So allowing you to talk to something else in ClearNet, like outside of the mixnet, using the mixnet as a shield. And because those aren't incentivized yet, because of the lack of credentials, then those are not going to be running on particularly robust machines, because robust machines cost money and people aren't earning money off the service. So even if you had like, a set of like really beefy machines all running mixed nodes, able to process the traffic of 100,000 people a day, or running apps through it, maybe browsing through it or something, if we're talking about the VPN case, then chances are right now, then the mixnet would kind of fall over. Not because the mixnodes would fall over, but because the gateways would probably crap out. You can kind of see where the incentivization starts coming in, like how the crypto economics is designed, because these are actually processes that run on server machines. Server machines cost money. Therefore, you need to have like a base level of incentivization there so that people are like, oh, okay, I can actually like afford to, rent a good box to run a gateway on, but also B, are like, oh, I can actually earn a small amount of passive income, semi-passive income off running a gateway. And the same with the service. Once you have those, it's kind of like the robustness of the mixnet is actually reliant upon all of the nodes inside it. The mixed nodes are, I suppose you could imagine the mixed node machines, but actually no, that's not even true, because actually how fast the gateways send traffic is another bottleneck, right? So we shouldn't forget the gateways and the services. So yeah, basically the second part of that answer was incentivization via credentials will probably mean that you'll get actually buff gateways and service boxes instead of the kind of smaller stuff that people are running things on now, aside from the service grants. But there's only like 47 of them, so it might be a lot of traffic to send. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess also what comes to mind here is the possible like interplay, or I don't know, the incentive for people who are running services to also run gateways, which should of course be of really high quality because their quality of service when it comes to their provided service depends on it. So that's also probably becoming a thing really quick as soon as people start developing stuff that runs on the mixnet, right?
Yeah, I mean the service grants model of running a service and a gateway, and like that gateway being, primarily for that service. That is, I imagine, a model that we'll see replicated a lot because it just makes sense. If you're running a service, your gateway is kind of part of your app infrastructure, with the service being the app. You can imagine it kind of like that. Yeah.
All right, so we're already over time, but we still have two pretty good questions. So let's do quick fire round because I also need to give a general update at the end. So next question is from Turbirus. When is the more user-friendly addressing system planned? Second half of the year? Question mark, or soon TM? Question mark. That's me adding that.
I think it might be like when someone starts building it. So yeah, maybe second round of dev grants. That could be like a good initial like proof of concept for someone to build, maybe, because I don't think it's necessarily on. We have a lot of other stuff to kind of get to the stage that I was just talking about planned for at least the next couple of months. Yeah.
All right. So then it's not soon TM, but it's close enough.
It's soon TM if someone builds it. So the power is in your hands in this situation, everyone, or mine if I get some time.
Right. All right. So last question from Sven again. So this is the quick last question. He's saying, maybe you answered it, but if codebase is not in Rust or TS, should we wait for SDK coming for other languages or move to Rust?
There's not necessarily any other. There's not really any other SDKs planned for right now that I am aware of. I'm not going to say I will never have any other SDKs, but I haven't heard of any others, and our code base is written in TypeScript and Rust, so it would be kind of weird to write an SDK in another language. Once we have, so like I said, we're working on like headless TypeScript, or at least we're working on TypeScript in we're working on the TypeScript SDK to be able to be used in non-browsers as well, so in stuff like a headless node setup. And then Rust obviously is also, that's already built for whatever these, like a more like programmatic approach to doing something and having this kind of like binary process running. It would be really interesting to see if you could actually use it in any Rust like front end frameworks. I saw one the other day which is being actively developed. That could be really cool. The setup is a little bit more irritating, but you could also write in any other language and just talk to the WebSocket client and maybe just have like quite a good monitoring / restart setup on for that Nym client, if you wanted to write in Python or something. So I wouldn't necessarily say, oh yeah, everyone throw down all your other languages and go to Rust. That's not necessary. You can use you can use the client to any language. It's just that your production setup would maybe be a little bit more involved. Does that answer your question, Sven?
Does it? Anyways, he'll elaborate if it didn't. But for now, I think we arrived at the end, which is huge. Very good questions today, guys. So big thanks for joining. Whether you asked a question or whether you didn't and just listened in, much appreciated.
Two things for everyone. One, in the I think it's in the community core channel. I dropped it. Everyone join Matrix. Just do that. I'm just plugging that basically. People should move over to Matrix. It's way nicer. The second one, like people just drop a thumbs up or something in the channel if you would also be interested in some kind of more like dev streams. So like, I don't know, live streaming, like building a simple service or something like this. Just if something like that is interesting, or if there's other formats than this as well that you think, oh, that would be really, really cool if we could like have something like this happen.
I'm seeing thumbs up, both in words and in emojis. So that I think is a yes.
Yeah.
Basically, I think so. What I'm going to be aiming for with the community calls is that basically do them in a way that looks good recorded as well. So there's a live stream for people to hang out, and then there's a recording which people can watch to catch up. So if you do that, I think that's pretty amazing.
The community manager to Twitch streamer pipeline is hitting you hard, Sudo.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm gonna be dyeing my hair blue soon and start streaming. What is it? Maybe Fortnite.
Yeah, I saw a really sick stream the other day. that was happening of someone installing Arch Linux in a hot tub, which I thought was particularly sick. I'm completely blanking on her name now. Yeah, but it's really good. So yeah, if people want to see more live streaming stuff, or even, I don't know, something like a kind of office hour kind of thing as well, if people have like dev questions or something that maybe they want to share, or once we have this set up, then we can kind of, as you said, Vista, we can let the freak flag fly.
Fly. Right. I like that. It's alliteration as well. So yeah, huge thanks for joining. Muchas gracias for the amazing questions, guys. Really good questions today. And also big thanks, Max, for taking the time.
No, they're good. They're good. I like it. Excited to get my avatar up so I can do Twitch without doxing my office. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, with that, I'll let you guys go and see you around on the channels. And not this Friday, but hopefully the next Friday on our Nym community call as well. And stay tuned for the announcement.
Join Matrix.
Yeah, join Matrix. Do that right now so that I also have a good excuse to hang out more in Matrix.
Yeah.
Besides just work. Yeah, let's build Matrix. Have a nice rest of the day, evening, morning, whatever it is in your area. Ciao.
Ciao, guys.